Stuff. Yay, yes, to make sure that I can, talk to you guys. So that wasn't working. All hope is lost. All right, so now that we've got people tuned in, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to get started. I want to keep this within 1 hour. Anyone who was on here for the Thursday night session, I was using some software that kicked you off after an hour, so it was very abrupt at the end. So I hope to have a smoother completion at the end of this, but still aiming to be just 1 hour. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. So I have created a folder on my local computer just called test, where I can store the files that we're going to be working on for today. I'm going to delete what I already have in there. So all we're going to be using for today's live session is a text editor that will already come on your computer. So for me, I have Windows and that'll be Notepad, but if you're on Mac, I think it's called Text Edit. So just use whatever kind of text editor you already have on your computer. There's no need to download a fancy IDE. And that stands for Integrated Development Environment. And that's what a lot of programmers use. And that gives you that cool like black background and makes all your words like fancy colors and all that. We don't need to be fancy today because we're learning the basics. So for the basics, all you need is a text editor. I'm going to open up Notepad. And then the only other thing that we're going to be using is our internet browser that's already on our computer. I use Google Chrome, that's just what I got. So those are the two things that I'll be using. So I'm going to open up a Google Chrome browser tab as well. So now that we've got our text document, the first thing that we want to do is we want to save it as an HTML file. That way when we go to open it later, the browser knows that what we are creating is a web page. So that extension will tell it it's a web page. So I'm going to Control S to go ahead and save this, saving it in my test folder that I created. And I'm going to name it index.html. You want to make sure your save type is switched to all files. I see someone wrote a comment, VS Code. Yeah, that's another popular IDE. And that's actually what I use in my day-to-day work. I use VS Code. But this also gets the job done. So we're going to do index.html. We're going to switch it to all files because we're doing our own custom file extension. And we're going to save. We're also going to create a second text file. So we're going to File, Save As. Oops, sorry. No, we're not. File, New Window. And then we're going to Save As. I'm keeping it in that same test folder, and I'm going to name this one style.css. As you probably guessed, this is going to be our CSS file, and this is where we will put the styling for our page. So the colors, manipulating the font and borders and whatnot. And again, you want to change that save type to all files because we're using our own custom extension, which is the .css. It's my first class. What are you teaching? So today is just an intro to code. I'm going to show the very basics on how you can create a, again, basic web page. So I'm going to be going over the main words and like terms that you need to know when working with HTML and CSS. And then you can see how your code will then display on a browser. So again, you don't have to download anything, you don't have to pay for anything. We're just going to be using our text editor that's on our computer and then our browser that's already installed. So you see that I already have this Google Chrome icon next to the index file that I created. That's because I used that extension of .html. So even though it was just a regular Notepad file, I told the computer that this is going to be a web page. So that's why it's got that icon on there. So then we've got our style.css. We can go ahead and save. And these are the only two files we're going to be working with today. I'll make this a little smaller. All right, the first thing that you need to know about HTML is when you write anything in here for your code, it's going to be structured in what they refer to as tags. So a tag is created by an opening angle brace, and then a closing angle brace, and then the name of your tag is going to go on the inside. You'll understand what tags are and how they really go into the web page a little bit later as we use them more. But this is the basic structure for creating a tag. So in here, I'm going to write HTML. I didn't just make that up. There is a full list of predefined tags that will work for HTML when they created their standards. So if you feel like it, you can hop on Google and look up what are all of the HTML tags that exist. But I don't recommend that because there's going to be like a handful of ones that you will use all of the time. So by the end of this video, I think you'll be able to tell what are the main like 5 to 10 tags that you will be most familiar with. So now that we've got our first tag in here, I'm going to copy that. So Control C. I'm going to come down a couple lines and then I'm going to paste it in here again and put a slash in the beginning. So what I did here is I created a closing HTML tag. So these two are the same thing. The only difference is this little slash here. And like I said, that's how we are going to tell the browser that this is a closing HTML tag. So this is the opening one and the closing one. And all of our code that we're going to do is going to be in between these two tags. It doesn't matter how many times you bump down or bump up. It doesn't matter. As long as it's within these two tags, anything you put here will be within your page. So I'm just going to write something here, literally something. That's it. And I'm going to save by hitting Control S. So I'm going to use a lot of hotkeys. So you won't see me going up here, File, Save every single time. The hotkey for saving is Control S, and that's going to be pretty much the thing that I use the most is just Control S a bunch of times. So anytime I say we're saving, that's what I'm going to be doing. So I put something in here and I saved it. And now how you want to view this in the browser is you go back to that folder where we saved our files and you go to your index file and you just open it. And you can see something is on there. And we did barely any work and we already have a tab on our browser that has something in it. So like already off the bat, you can see that you've made something. And so from there, that's the gist of it. If you can understand how we already did that, then from there, it's just building on that. It's learning more tags. It's learning how to place them on a page to make everything, look nice. I'm going to go in here. So, oops. I'm going to go under this something and I'm going to start creating more tags. The whole purpose of the tags is that you're providing like instruction to the browser of how your code is, again, going to be placed. So you'll notice when we ran the browser, we don't see that opening HTML and that closing HTML tag in here. That's the user. That's something, again, that's just for the browser to know what to do with the information you're giving it. So we're not going to see our tags in here. We're just going to see anything that's within the tag. So another one that we use that's very common is the head tag. So I'm going to do an opening head tag and a closing head tag in that same style. You can kind of think of a web page as structured like a body. So there's a head, then there's a body, and then there's feet, which, the tag for that would be footer. So we're going to do our opening closing head tag to let it know our web page is going to have a head. We're going to do opening and closing body tags. Same way, bump down a bit and do opening and closing footer tags. Again, these are predefined by the HTML standards. I'm not just like making up these words. These are the actual tag names. So within the head tag, what you use this for is things that are really going on behind the scenes. Again, if we think of our web page as a person, like you don't get to see what's going on in someone's head, but this is where, this is where all the big ideas happen. So there's a lot of things that you can put in your header tag, but for right now, for the purposes of just being very simple, the only thing I'm going to put in here is a command that will combine this style file that we created and our index. So right now these are two separate files, but the way that they talk to each other and the way the browser knows how to use them together is to link them together. So you link them together in the head portion by, of course, using a link tag. And instead of doing a link tag like this, opening and closing as we've been doing, you can do what is called a self-closing tag. This doesn't work for just get rid of this closing one and you put that slash right here at the end of the opening tag. So you've already learned two different ways to create a tag, like the opening and closing tag like this, or a self-closing tag is in this style. That's why I say, little questions I want to know about setup, about how this live is going. If your back camera is showing laptop, then how the face is showing, tell me, I'm confused. So that's something that I can get into in a separate video on how to do this kind of structure for the live session, but I'm using a combination of different software and like camera angles and mic and whatever. So yeah, it's a lot involved with that. And so I can probably create a separate video on that if that's something that, more people want to hear about. So back here to this link tag, the way that we're going to specify that we want to link our style file over here that we have is we're going to come right after it says link, and we're going to add what's called an attribute. An attribute is something extra you give to these tags to help it do its job correctly. So this attribute we're going to do is an href, and that's what we're going to use to reference that file. So our href, our reference, is going to be equal to the name of this file that we want to connect, which is style.css. So we're just going to put style.css in here. And the next attribute that we want to give to this tag is we want to tell it that this file we're linking has a relationship of our style sheet. So we're going to give it a rel attribute, that's for relation. The relation is, this is our style sheet. Again, I can just make up that word. This is how you have to write it for it to work correctly. So we're going to href the name of our file, and we're going to set the relation of HTML file for now. And we can come back over here to, I can put some information in here. So CSS styling is going to be written a slightly different way than the HTML file would be. Of course, they're, two separate languages, so they're not going to be written the exact same. Here, the way that you create your CSS file is that you first want to specify which element of your HTML document you want to do something to. So I'm thinking I want to make the body, the whole body of the page, blue. So I'm going to come over here and just type the name of our HTML tag, body. We're going to put a space, and in here we're going to do an opening curly brace and a closing curly brace. Same thing, it doesn't matter how many times you bump this down, everything will work the same. So within these curly braces is where we're going to say what we want to do to that body tag. So I'm going to do background color colon blue, and then you end with semicolon. This is how it needs to be structured. You need to put the type of action that you want to perform. And again, these are predefined by the CSS standards. So you can, again, go on Google and look up what are all the things that you can do within CSS. There's a whole list of them. But right now, this is one that I'm just telling you is background dash color. Then you put a semicolon, and I'm typing blue. Sorry, this is a colon, then blue, and then a semicolon. You always want to end off with a semicolon. That's how you know that your command is finished. I'm going to save this. Now I have both of my files saved, and I can come back over here to my browser and refresh, and you'll see that the whole body of the page is blue. So that's that. I mean, that kind of gives me a headache. So I'm going to change this blue to like a light blue. I think that's how you write it. And I'm going to save and refresh the browser. Okay, and now it's a light blue. That's a little bit easier on the eyes. So you can see how easy it is to link our HTML file with our CSS file. And then we can use CSS to target any of those elements in our HTML file, because now that they're talking, they can share information. So now we're able to change the background color and whatnot. So for my purposes right now, I'm going to take off that light blue background color, just take the whole thing off. I'm going to save this file. You always want to make sure you're constantly saving anytime you make a change, because if you change something and you don't save it, obviously you're not going to see those changes take place. That's a common thing. So don't feel bad if you forget to save and you're like, why am I not seeing my changes, and get very frustrated. That's a very common thing that happens with people who are developing for the first time, or missing a semicolon. Even people who have been developing for like 20 years will forget a semicolon somewhere, and then they'll just be stressed out for weeks on like why their code's not working. It can be the simplest things. That's why I'm taking time to go slow on these basics right now. We've already been in this session for like, what is it? 15 minutes, like almost 20 minutes, and we don't have that much code in here, and that's fine because I'm going slow with the very basics, because like I said, this is beginner friendly. Then towards the second half of the live session, I'm going to be going a little bit faster, so the things that you've already learned will just be plugged in. So right now I just took that styling out of the body tag. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I love how it's just so easy to just make something happen easily. And very quickly. With you don't have to download anything. I know people feel like you have to have a fancy computer or like fancy equipment. You don't have to do any of that to just make something, literally make something like on our browser. So now we're going to go back to our HTML file. We're going to start building this out some more. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about tags. We're going to learn a couple more tags. So you'll notice when we changed the color of body to blue, it changed the whole page. Because essentially the body is the whole thing. If you're thinking of a web page as a person, like the body is it's the whole thing, you know? So what you want to do is you want to add more tags to kind of break things down within the body and like specify different areas. So sort of having containers. There's a bunch of different tags available for your use. But again, to keep things simple, I'm just going to be using the div tag. This tag is div, D-I-V. I'm going to create an opening one and a closing one. I'm just going to bump down a couple so I don't see other stuff crowding my space. So the div tag, I actually don't know what it stands for, but I refer to it as like a divider. We're just creating little, little components within our page. So within this div, I'm just going to write, this is a div. I'm going to save my file, refresh the page, and you'll see this is a div is on here, and it's right under something, because in our HTML, that's how we wrote it. Something was at the top. This is a div is below that. So we don't see any of these tags and all this extra stuff going on in the background, but we see our elements within the tag listed in order. So HTML is all about structure. How you place something within your HTML code is going to be how it shows up on the page. So I'm going to copy this and go down below. I'm going to paste another one down a little bit, and I'm going to paste it again. And I'm going to help these stand out a little bit. This is my first div. This is my second div. This is my third div. I'm going to Control S to save that, refresh over here, and you'll see we have something. This is my first div, this is my second, this is my third. I'm also going to give this footer down here a little personality. So I'm going to go in here and write, this is my footer, period. Save, refresh so we can see that. This is my footer in here. So hopefully that helps you understand how these tags just help you break up information, because you can imagine when you have like a fully, completely, nicely, professionally done website, there's going to be a lot of elements on there. So you're going to really be taking advantage of these tags to help you like really portion things off. I'm also going to throw this out there. If there's any professional programmers watching this, this is not for you, okay? Okay, I know there's probably better ways to do a lot of this stuff, but in my opinion, this is how I can explain it to beginners to keep it simple, keep it user-friendly, and just get something on the page. Just get something on the browser. Because that's how I learn best. If I can write something and I can see something happen, to me, that's how I make that connection of, you know, this is the foundation. This is how you get something going. So anyone who's like a super expert on these topics, like just keep. So now that we have some content on our page and we know how to use our CSS file, I'm going to try and target one of these specific elements. So before I targeted the body page and made the background light blue. I'll do that again just so that you guys can see that again. Background, colon, light blue, ending it in a semicolon. Save that, refresh my browser, and you'll see the whole body of the page is light blue. Well, if you want to, you know, specify just one of these elements in your HTML file, you need to figure out which one you want to target. And I'm going to go with this first div. We're going to do this a little bit differently than we did the body one, because for the body one, we just typed the name of the tag, which was body. But you'll see if we type the name of this tag, which is div, and we do our opening curly brace and closing curly brace, and we tell it to do something. Say we want this background to be orange. This is a good chance to kind of get the wheels turning for beginners. If you can think about it, you don't have to answer, but try and think about what this is going to do to our page. If we target the div tag and we change the background to orange, what do you think is going to happen on the page? Are we going to change the background of this one to orange like we want it to? Let's save, and we refresh. So it didn't just change our first div tag's background to orange, it changed all div tags that are on the page. So when you target something by a tag, you are targeting every single tag that matches that on this HTML page. That's obviously not what we wanted to do. I mean, it's cool. If you want all your divs to do the same thing, you can use that. But most of the time, you're going to be targeting only specific elements here and there. So the way you do this is you have to give your different divs a little bit more personality. You can do this in two common ways. We're going to add attributes. And if you remember from our link tag up here, we added an attribute of href and we added an attribute of relation. Here we're going to do it that same way. We're going to go to the end of the div, the opening div tag. We're going to space over, and the attribute that we're going to learn about now is class. So a class, again, if we're thinking of our web page as a person, a class could be like a collection of a bunch of different elements within it. You know, like a class has a bunch of different students in it. So if I tell the class to do something, all the students, you know, in a perfect world, all the students within that class will be doing that same thing. So you can put any elements that you want inside of this class. And this class I'm going to make it equal to, you can name it whatever you want here. So this is not structured. This class I'm just going to say, I'm going to call it orange background. I'm going to be real creative. So this div now has a class of orange, is in the class orange background. I'm going to save that. Now we're going to go to our CSS document, and we're going to tell the orange background class, you know, what to do. Right now I'm going to take out this div with the background orange because we don't need that anymore. So I'll save that. All right, and so now, like I said, we're going to be targeting that class of orange background. So how you target a class is you first start off with a period and then the class name, orange background. Our opening curly brace and closing curly brace again. Inside this, we're going to specify background dash color is orange. Finish it off with a semicolon and save. Now again, if you can take a moment to try to get those wheels turning and think about what's going to happen to our page when we refresh. Now, the background color should be orange only for those elements that are in this orange background class. Right now, the first div is class. So hopefully we've completed our mission of just changing that first div. So we'll save, and you see the change right here. Only that first div has that orange background. Now, if anyone remembers the preview of the site that we're going to be building, I have the rows banded. So I think I had the nav bar was orange, then the second div, then the footer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this this word something up here. I'm going to put it inside of a nav tag. Nav is really meant for navigation, but I also sometimes use it for titles in, you know, in a site that I'm just whipping together like this. So you could do whatever you want inside this nav tag. Tag with something in it. This shouldn't change anything on the page though. It's just for me to know. And now I'm going to give this nav tag the same class of orange background. So I'm going to do Control X to copy and delete that class, and I'm going to put it up here. After nav, I'm going to paste that class of orange background. I also want to put it here on this second div. So I'm going to find my second. I'll put the class here. I'm going to save, and anyone who's been following along up to this point already knows what's going to happen when we refresh. Now we have our banded rows because we put the class of orange background on the nav, we put it on the second div, and we put it on the footer. So you'll see how using a class is beneficial because we didn't have to go through and be like, nav background is orange, then the second div is orange. We didn't have to keep typing that out for every element. All we did was put them in the same class. So now they're all behaving the same way. So to add on to that, going back to our CSS file, let's make the font size 20 pixels. and we're going to save and refresh. So I changed the font size of the class, the orange background class, to 20. So you'll see only those ones that are in that class increase the font size to 20. So I'm going to go back to our CSS file. I'm going to take out that 20 pixels because it just bothers me to have the font different sizes. But that was just for demonstration purposes. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to take off that light blue background because we're and now we're feeling real October 31st-ish here. So now we've got our body background is black. We've got our orange banded rows in here. Something you may notice is all around the outside, there's like this little like, I don't know, this like strip of black, which you wouldn't originally expect to be there. I already know why that's happening. Like we didn't specify that. We didn't tell it to put this thick black border around the outside. But I just know from experience, that's because the Chrome browser already has some built-in styling. So even though you tell the page to do a certain thing, depending on what browser you use, your page can look slightly different. So that's something for like a further topic down the line. That's not exactly intro friendly, but that's in the realm of cross compatibility. So if you hear that, that just means making sure that your page looks the same no matter which platform that you're using. So that's, again, an advanced thing. But just to go ahead and get rid of that, I know that it's styling on the body tag. And what it is they have an extra margin around the outside of the body tag. So I'm going to make this margin 0 so I can get rid of that extra stuff that came with the page. Save, refresh, and you'll notice it's gone. Again, that's not something that you should just like automatically know. I only know because I've seen it before. So don't feel like you're not getting something here. All right, now I want to make all of these divs much taller. I don't want them so short. And I do want all of my divs to react the same. So here it's okay to use the targeted tag right here of div. Now what I want to do is I want to increase the height attribute, and I think I want to make it like 300 pixels tall. So you'll notice I'm using px like pixels. Of course, that's the digital version of like inches. So you'll get more familiar as you do these things, like how much a pixel is worth, so to speak. So for me, I know that 300 pixels is probably a good height. So when I refresh, I'm actually going to make this bigger so you can see. We have our title up here is real short, and then we've got some nice big banded rows, and then our footer is down here like really small, pretty much non-existent. This is my footer. So now I'm going to go ahead and increase that title. To go a little bit faster because I've already gone slow and breaking down the the basics. So right now it's just kind of building on that and putting more things. So I'm going to go ahead and target our nav bar. Sorry, our nav tag. I'm going to give it a height of 75 pixels. And I'm going to also target the footer tag, give it a height of probably not as tall, like 50 pixels. Save. Refresh. And you'll see that's a pretty good height for like a title. Down here, this is a pretty good height for the footer. Another thing I want to do is I want to make all of the text on my page centered because I think that looks nice. And we're working one element at a time. So I want this to affect everything on the page. So I'm going to target that entire body tag. So I'm going to come up here where we already have our body tag. I'm going to give it a height of, oh wait, sorry, we're doing text align center. So this is going to be all of the text on the page will be centered. Refresh, boom, it works. Of course, you can't see the text here in these black bands because we haven't changed that to say a white. I think white would look good against the black background. So just like we created an orange background class, I'm going to create a black background class so that all of these elements with the black background can behave the same. So I know our divs that have the black background are this first one and this third one. So I'm going to go in my HTML document, find my first div, and give it a class of, again, you get to write whatever you want in here, as long as it makes sense. And I'm going to be very obvious and give it a class of black background. Oh my gosh, black background. I'm going to do the same thing to the third div. Class is equal to black background. I'm going to save. Nothing's going to happen yet because I put it in this class, but I didn't tell the class to do anything, so nothing's going to change. Now I'm going to go to the CSS. I'm going to tell the class, which you start with a period, the class black background. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to tell it to have a color, which is automatically what they use for font color. So if you write color, it's not going to change the background. It's just going to be the text color. So I want the color to be white. Boom. So we have something, our first div, second div, third, and a footer. Now we're going to start adding some more fun elements in here to make it look like something. So I'm going to add a picture, a little description about the picture, and a link at the bottom. So what we can do is we go to our very first div that we have in here. This is my first div. I'm going to go down a line, and we're learning a new tag. It's the image tag, which is just IMG. That's our image tag. Again, I'm going to bounce down a little bit, create some space so that not everything's like smushed together. The image tag is also one of those ones that have the ability to be self-closing. So we're going to do IMG, and we're going to do that slash at the end, if you remember our self-closing tags before. So we're going to have our image tag, and we want to give it an attribute so that it knows where to go pull this image in from. This attribute we're going to give it is called source. So where is our image being sourced from? Right now we don't have an image to work with, but we can easily just go to Google and find some. So I'm going to go to Google. I'm just going to type in Halloween image. I'm going to go to this first one because I'm not picky. I'm going to save image as. I'm going to go put it in our test folder because we want to keep all of our files that we're working with in the same folder. I'm just going to save it as image1. Save. I'm going to be putting an image under each of my 3 divs, so I'm going to go ahead and download 3 images. I'll click this one, save image as. We're going to make sure it's in that same folder. Image 2. Save. And now for the third one, pick a rando image, save it in that same test folder. This is going to be image 3. Save. All right, so now I'm done with this. I'm just going to close this out. We're going to go to our HTML file. And now that we have downloaded some images to work with, we can now specify where our image is going to be sourced from. So just like we linked up here, if you remember when we did the link tag, we gave it an href and we just put the file name in here. We're going to do the same thing here. The source is going to just be the file name. So that first one is image1, and I looked really quickly when I was saving the images, but I know they're all JPEG. At least I I think I remember them all being JPEG. So you want to make sure you put the correct extension on here, because if you put this or you put like a PNG or something and that's not how your file actually is saved, then of course it's not going to work. So I'm going to put image1.jpg in here. I'm going to copy this whole tag and I'm going to put it down below the second div, but of course I'm going to change it to image2. I'm going to also paste it in my third div and change it to image3. Again, you want to make sure it's inside of these divs, okay? So this is the opening div and this is the closing div, and I have put it inside of there. And I'm going to save and refresh. Ooh, and I've got some pictures on the page. Obviously, these pictures are like way out of proportion. So now I want to size them. I want to target these specific image elements and I want to tell them to be a certain size. So I'm going to go to my CSS and I want all of the images to react the same. I look real shiny. Okay, I want all of the images to react the same, so I'm going to tag or target the entire image tag. Open and closing. I want it to be about 200. Oops, sorry. I'm doing width. So like see if I need to adjust it. Save and refresh. Okay, I mean 200 is good, but I mean it's a little small. So I'll make it a little bit bigger. We'll make this 300. And then I'm going to, the heights look fine. No. Yeah, once we make it bigger, I'm going to want the height to be bigger too. So I'm going to specify a height. I want them all to be, of course, not as tall as they are wide. So maybe we'll see what 200 pixels is looking like. And save. To me, this looks good. Our images look fine. And we still have this is my first div, this is my second div, this is my third div. And we can take that text out because by now you guys are pros and you know where your first, second, and third divs are because we've given them some personality too. So it's easy to find those. I'm gonna take out that, this is my third div thing, this is my second div, take that out. This is my first div, take that out. So I just took those out of the HTML, saved it. And now what I want to put underneath of each of my pictures is a small description. So I'm going to jump down, make another div, open and closing tag div. This is a random description for an equally random photo from Google. Thanks for checking out my site. If you want to see more, please visit my website below. Just a cute little blurb in there. Now you'll see at the end I made a reference to a website below. So I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to put a link to a website. So now that we're done with this div tag, so you do an opening, closing one. I didn't bounce down a couple lines because I like to keep my anchor tag like all on one. I mean, it's just preference, but again, it doesn't matter if you do it like this or not. So for my anchor tag, what I put in between is just going to be the words that I want to be displayed on my link. So I'm going to write, click here. Very descriptive. And what I want to do is give this anchor tag an attribute. Just like we did with link, our attribute went and grabbed our style sheet and image, our source went out and grabbed the image, provide an href attribute. And I don't actually have a website that I want to link here. So if you just want the page to refresh and just not have it activated, we're just going to do the hashtag symbol. So that hashtag symbol, again, will just like refresh your page. It's not going to take you anywhere. Or of course, if you want, go ahead and put Google in here and pretend that's your site. So I'm going to save that and we'll see how this looks now that we've done that. Refresh, and you'll see under our image, we have our description. We do not have our link. Our link is not in here. Why not? Oh, our link is down here under the second one. So did I place it in the wrong place? That's actually that's a good thing for us to troubleshoot. I don't know why my link is all the way down here underneath this image right now. Y'all are so weird whispering. So that's a good one. I'm gonna cut this, which is copy and delete it, save and refresh. Okay, so that's gone for now. It's probably some positioning. So I'm going to do a little troubleshooting, which I'm not going to go into exactly what I'm doing right now, but I'm going to be using the Chrome developer tools. That helps to provide me with some more insight into what's going on. So I can see as I hover over this, right here where we just put our description, this description, you'll see the highlighting blue everywhere. It's very tall. So this div is 300 pixels wide. And I can tell you exactly why that happened. Because if you'll remember in our CSS, I'm going to close this out now that mystery is solved. Remember in our CSS, we targeted all the div tags and we gave them a height of 300 pixels. Well, we just put that description inside of a div. So now that description is 300 pixels wide. That's why my anchor tag got bumped all the way down here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my anchor tag back where it was under the description and save that. But now I have to edit this div height of 300. One way that we can do that is we can target only the elements that we want to be 300 pixels high. And that's these banded rows we created. So we have this div, this one, and this one, these three. So let's give them a little personality. For these three divs, going to go to that first main div that had the first one has the black background. So we're going to give it another class. So you can add more than one class, just like a student in school. They don't just go to one class, that's it. They can have multiple classes. How you define a second class is you just do a space, and this is now a separate class that we're going to define. And we're going to define this one as tall. We're just gonna say this is gonna be a tall class. So we'll go to all of our divs that we want to be tall, which is that second one. Boop, right here with the orange background. We also want to space tall. This black background one, space tall. And we save that. Now we want to go back to our CSS. We want to take out that height of 300 on the divs, and we want to replace it with the class tall. So this way, the only things that should be specified as 300 pixels tall are those students that are in our tall class. So now when we save and refresh our page, now we'll see my link is right back where it should be, where I was expecting it to be in the beginning. But then that's also like a real live lesson on how to easily troubleshoot something. So I would recommend once you get your basics down, and if this is really something you want to dive into more, learn about the Chrome developer tools, because that's going to help you with troubleshooting immensely to be able to go to that. So now we've got this where it needs to be. Our 3 divs are 300 pixels high, but our description is not. That's good. I also don't want my description to like take up the whole width of the page. So I'm going to give all my description a little personality. So we're going to go to our div description. We're going to give it a class of, I don't know what, I don't want it to be that big. So I'm going to just call it limited. I don't know. Again, you get to name it whatever you want to name it. So I'm going to call this class limited because I'm going to be limiting the width. Here in our CSS, I'm now going to target that class with the period, width, opening tag, closing tag, and I'm going to give it a width of, I want it to be wider than our images. So maybe 600 pixels. No, I don't want it to be quite double. So we'll do 500 pixels. Save and refresh. Oh, okay. So my page is so small that it wouldn't even show you that difference. So I did the wrong class, my bad. This one is called, the class is called limited. I think that's why it didn't work. So we're targeting the class limited, giving it a width. The width is now limited on our description. Everything else is like moving and expanding to adjust to the width of the screen, but that description is staying only 500 pixels wide because that's what we told it to do. But also, like, hey, I want him to hang out in the middle of the web page with all the other elements. So I want to center this limited description. I want to center it in the middle of the page. So an easy way to do that is to give it a margin of 0 and auto. And what this does is the margin will take two numbers or like 2 pixels. So you can specify that first number will be what you want to do to the top and bottom margins. And the second one will be what do you want to do to the side margins. So for the top and bottom margins, we put 0 there because we don't want to do anything, no leveling here. We just want to just keep it where it is. But for the side, we put auto, and that will automatically adjust the side margins to be even, which will place our element right in the center. So that's how that 0 auto works. And that's something that you're going to be using a lot to center elements on your page if you're using CSS a lot. So when you go ahead and refresh, you'll see our description has now popped up into the middle of the page, which is right where we want it. And this looks good enough to paste to our other divs. So we'll go back to the HTML file. We're going to grab that anchor tag we created and our description. We're going to copy that. We're going to go down here after our second image. We're going to paste it in there, and we're going to go down to where we have our third image. Go under that, paste, save, refresh our page, and now we've got a description and a link to a website on each and every one of these things. Oh yeah, I didn't, the links don't really go anywhere, so I'm just going to put a hashtag. Again, the hashtag will just refresh the page. So I'm going to change all these anchor references to hashtags. Where's the other one? Ah, there we go. Hashtag, save, refresh. And now when we click any of these links, all we're doing is we're just refreshing our page. Last thing that I think I want to do is just make this title a little better. I mean, we have something up there and something's better than nothing, right? But let's give it a little, again, personality. Let's say, welcome to my Halloween shop. I'll save that, and then I'm going to go to CSS and add some styling on that. So we're going to target our nav tag again, which we already did when we gave it a height of 75. And we're going to make it bigger. So we want this font size to be something like, I don't know, maybe 30 pixels. Let's save. refresh. Now that looks like the size of a title right there. I also kind of want it to bump down a little bit, like it doesn't need to be that high up. So I'm going to add a little bit of padding to the top. And the padding around an element is like, you could think if you're going to actually ship something across the country, you're going to put a little bit of padding, like some, bubble wrap or whatever, and it's going to be like little cushioning between the border or like the box in this analogy and your item that's inside. So that's going to help it bounce down a little bit. So we're going to give it a padding top of like, not 15, that's a little excessive. No, I think 15 would be good. 15 pixels. Save, refresh, and you'll see it bounce down just slightly, which is all I wanted it to do, just a slight little good. I also want to change all of the text on the whole page to, and not be this like standard font, and maybe make it all a little bit bigger. So we can go back to our body tag because that's what we can use for targeting the whole website. We'll make our font size 16 pixels and font family Verdana, because that's just one that I know like looks a little better than the standard. Save, refresh, and you'll see the font has changed to the Verdana font. All the text on the page is slightly bigger and more appealing. And that's how you make the Halloween shop page. I mean, let me spruce up the footer just right quick, because who wants to say this is my footer? I'm going to, created by Kim R. I'm going to do this little symbol, which is for the copyright symbol that you'll see on pages. And then I'll write 2020, save. We refresh and we have a nice little like actual footer down here. So again, this was like kind of like a crash course. I went very slow in the beginning to break down like what are tags, how do you create your files, how do you link them together, and then the second half was more just like plugging and playing things to make it look like something. So again, this is very basic. It's not hosted online anywhere. This is just on my local computer, and this is something that you can do too without downloading any software. So if you want me to send you the files for what we worked on today, and you can go in and change some of the elements and do your own little fun playground thing, just DM me your email address and I'll absolutely send you my HTML and CSS file, and you can go